Hello YouTube. In the last video, I discussed what our founding fathers would think of our country if Americans of today could travel back to July 3rd, 1776 and talk to the founding fathers. Most of the issues covered were surface level topics such as demographics and some simple history. Let's imagine we stayed longer and discussed a lot more when we traveled back in time to that period. We are going to assume that potential issues with time travel such as spreading disease have already been addressed by the administrators of time travel. Once the issues of America in 2026 were explained, the founding fathers can't help but ask for a more in-depth introduction to the other 37 states. The first state to join the Union outside of the 13 original colonies was Vermont in 1791. We can't cover every single state, but we'll try our best. 4 states, including the previously mentioned Vermont, Texas, California, and Hawaii, were at one time independent entities who then either decided to join the United States or joined the United States involuntarily. In the Wild West, Nevada is known as the state of sin. If you couldn't tell, it's one of my personal favorite states to visit. I mean, the state isn't actually known as the state of sin, but it might as well. It's a libertarian and anarchist's paradise. The state became famous for permitting gambling statewide when it was otherwise illegal elsewhere across the country. The city of Las Vegas is famous for the massive casinos that dominate its skyline. In every part of the state other than Las Vegas, prostitution is legal. It's the only state in the United States that allows that profession. Cannabis is legal here as well. Right next to the state of Nevada is Utah. The United States is not particularly known as a religious travel destination, unlike, say, Israel with the West Wall or Saudi Arabia and Mecca. There are no state religions in the United States, and religion is on the decline in general in the US. However, I thought I'd mention Utah because it's kind of like the polar opposite of Nevada. It's like one of the most religious states in the United States because Utah happens to be home to a particular denomination, the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, or Mormonism. And why am I giving the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints a shout out in a History About America 250 compared to other religions? Well, it's the only religion I can think of that quote-unquote has originated in the United States. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and that's why I included this subject in the video. I mean, the state of Utah is home to so many Mormons and religious institutions belonging to that denomination. It has been stereotyped as the Mormon state and the overly religious state. I'm just saying, one of America's future states being home to a Christian religious group that has influence around the world probably wasn't on their bingo card. There are religious sites scattered throughout the state, including the Holy Tabernacle in Salt Lake City. The founding fathers might be surprised that most states in the rest of the country got their inspiration for their names from Spanish or indigenous origins. They might have envisioned more Anglo-themed names. I wonder if you ask them which one of the 37 states they would like to visit, which ones they would choose. I spent so much time talking about America's states, I have neglected talking about its cities, which are some of the most iconic in the world. The top 10 largest cities in the United States of America in the 18th century were, perhaps to no one's surprise, concentrated on the east coast of North America. In 2026, they are now spread out across the continental United States. New York is still the largest city, however, America's second largest city, Los Angeles is located on the other side of the continent on the Pacific coast, and the third largest, Chicago, is somewhat situated in the middle of the country on the bank of Lake Michigan. Some may be curious about what has become of America's indigenous tribes. The vast majority of tribes in the eastern half of the country saw most, if not all, of their land seized by the government and redistributed back to white settlers. Many were moved to the state of Oklahoma, which was known as Indian Territory for the longest time. Tribal lands and reservations become more common as you head west across the country. There are 326 reservations showcasing unique indigenous culture. If you are watching this video and you happen to live near one, be sure to check them out if you have the chance. Some founders are happy that the American West was tamed, while others are distraught at the thought that Anglo-Native American relations deteriorated so significantly. Despite claims some white Americans make today that Indian tribes have been wiped out and are on the fringes and barely exist in our society, indigenous culture has rebounded. It is alive and well and is definitely a part of the American identity. America's creators may not have thought that some of history's biggest and most complex engineering projects were developed by Americans. These include the Panama Canal, which isn't in the United States, but it was financed, planned, negotiated, and built by Americans. Plus, the country of Panama kinda owes their existence to America flushing out a plan with Colombia. It helped cut travel time between the east and west coast and revolutionized trade in the Americas and the wider world. It's also considered one of the world's most important trade routes. The Hoover Dam, which helps sustain the lives of tens of millions in the American Southwest by providing water and electricity. The interstate highway system, which has significantly cut the time it takes to travel across the country. And the International Space Station, which the whole story of the space race and America's endeavors in the cosmos might make the founders' heads explode when fully explained. I mean, we could do an entire video on NASA because America's space program is basically one giant engineering project. Right now, though, I am specifically going to talk about engineering feats, so that means I am just going to give a shout out to America's contributions to the ISS. When navigating cities across the US, what stands out at first sight are the extremely tall buildings that make up the downtown areas of all these cities. The founders are made aware that these are called skyscrapers and were first developed in American cities like Chicago and New York in the late 19th century. These are just some of the engineering and infrastructure projects that have defined America throughout the centuries. Speaking of engineering, the founders might be confused when they see products and various things measured by the metric system. However, they don't have to worry about any changes in how they measure things because the US is one of only 3 countries left on the entire planet that hasn't adopted the metric system nationally. The founding fathers would be flabbergasted at the sheer quantity of restaurant options available in American communities. When considering what businesses to open up in a community they just moved to, many immigrant families will choose to open up a restaurant. Given America's immigrant past, I'd say it's normal to see at least 3 different countries' cuisine present in most small to medium-sized towns. I lived in a small town for quite a while, and I've traveled a lot of times throughout the country, and it's just something I noticed. Please, my fellow Americans, if you agree, let me know, and if that's something you don't agree with at all, mention that as well. But especially in the Southwest, a lot of small towns are going to see a Mexican restaurant present within the community. I mean, it's present to satisfy local residents' desire for spicy foods. Numerous cities and regions outside of Mexico but inside the USA all claim to serve the best Mexican food. That might be a little silly when you explain that to the founding fathers. You have Tex-Mex, which is just a combination of the state of Texas and Mexico's different cuisine. Los Angeles claims to serve the best Mexican food, and well, there is some merit to that case. The best Mexican food in the United States, at least. Let's just make that clear. As a resident of the Southwest, I have to give a brief shout out to Hatch, New Mexico, the chili capital of the US. If you have ever been through Hatch, you will know that the town is dominated by the vegetable. Every building seems to have a cluster of chilies hanging from it. And if you've ever been in the grocery store and seen a Hatch chili, there's a good chance that it was either grown in the Hatch Valley or it is a direct descendant of a chili grown in the Hatch Valley. Now, the next type of cuisine that you might see in these small towns is Chinese cuisine. A Chinese couple that lives there is going to sure as hell try to open a Chinese restaurant. The name is going to incorporate dragon or jade in it. If the town is significantly large, it may also be home to a local take on Italian gastronomy. If the founding fathers want access to the widest variety of food, I highly recommend my hometown of Tucson, Arizona. It is the only United Nations designated U.S. city as an internationally recognized city of gastronomy. The city's cuisine is influenced by nearby Mexico, the local indigenous tribes, northerners bringing whatever culinary additions they may possess, and of course, immigrants from all over the world. Although any large city will have a diverse culinary environment to choose from. And as an American, I think that's one of the best things about this country. As an Arizona resident, which was the final state to join the continental US in 1912 as the 48th state, I thought it would be worth it to quickly mention how much the American household may vary from that of a British household. Many homes even vary in style within the country. In the Southwest, indigenous tribes taught Spanish settlers how to build their houses so that the outside heat wasn't so oppressive inside the houses. These were called adobe, and the material on the outside is called stucco. Recognizable by the smooth texture of the outside walls, the bright colors, and the rigid square shapes, they have become ubiquitous when one looks out upon the landscape. The Spanish also influenced how buildings in the Southwest look, with many buildings built with Spanish and indigenous inspirations. Many houses in the Midwest were built with simplicity in mind. In the Midwest, most houses will have an additional space called a basement in order to provide protection if a tornado happens to hit the house. Modern apartments aren't just expected to provide living quarters. Tenants also expect a pool, exercise facilities, and maybe even commercial space for businesses on the ground floor. The founders may notice the sudden difference in temperature if they were to step into a house, since most American households have some sort of air conditioning or central air system. U.S. houses in general are much larger than their foreign counterparts. Unfortunately, if George Washington wanted to stay in 2026 and buy a house, he would have to shell out quite a pretty penny. Mortgage and rent prices have been elevated for some time now during the 2020s. It has created much consternation among political circles. American homes are defined by their size, price, temperature control, climate, and colonial influence. While geographical features may define the identity of a nation, for example, the Bahamas are defined by the fact that they are an island. The residents probably include fish in their daily diet. They see the beach every day. They have to worry about tropical storms. The African country of Lesotho is the highest nation on earth on average because it's located in the mountains. They are one of the few African countries to have a real winter because of that elevation. The Scandinavian countries are known for their cold climate. The founding fathers may be perplexed when they are greeted by people who reside on tropical islands, hardened people who live in the unforgiving environment of the tundra, desert dwellers such as myself, whose skin looks baked by the sun, farmers, and as far as I'm concerned, those people are kind of the same everywhere, mountaineers whose lives revolve around the mountain landscape, the altitude and clean air, and all of those who reside in America's vast wilderness. Despite all the different geographical backgrounds, I think it's amazing all of these people can claim to be proud Americans. When discussing sports and America in the last video, I completely forgot to mention probably the biggest sporting event of 2026. On its 250th birthday, FIFA, the global governing body of the world's most popular sport, soccer, bestowed the US the honor of hosting the World Cup along with its North American counterparts, Mexico and Canada. Now, if you were to explain that to the founding fathers, would they be perplexed or honored? America's performance in the world's most popular sport has been the one blemish on an otherwise impressive sports history. Since its creation in the 1870s and the World Cup's debut in 1930, America has performed in a lackluster fashion, only reaching the semifinals once in 96 years of World Cup history, and well, that was in the first World Cup in 1930, when there is only 8 teams participating, as opposed to the 48 teams in 2026. Americans can't even agree with the world in what to call it, football or soccer. One of America's most famous games was against Colombia in 1994 when America upset the favorites. Fans in Colombia were so upset that Colombia's goalie that mere weeks later he was killed. Now to a more brighter subject related to soccer. Hopefully the next 250 years will be more positive for America in football. The founders may ask, what issues do contemporary Americans face in 2026, other than the ones we already discussed in the other video? Even though the country and current government have remained stable over the past 2.5 centuries, America in 2026 isn't immune from issues. The current issues aren't because the founders included major problematic issues in the Constitution per se. Most of the issues stem from the fact that there has been a lot of technological and societal change and advances in the 250 years since the Constitution was drafted. When discussing the First Amendment, it's important to consider that there are so many more mediums to express and share ideas and opinions. Radio, TV, internet, to name a few. The founders didn't conceive that the Federal Communications Commission and its responsibilities, plus the way it could be exploited. The size of the federal bureaucracy in general would be mind-boggling to them. The number of agencies and administrations that work under the federal government have grown exponentially since the nation's founding. This isn't the video to debate whether that's a good or bad thing, that's just the truth. In 1776, you were a skilled marksman if you could get more than 3 shots off in a minute. Nowadays, there are guns that fire hundreds of rounds a minute. How strictly should the country follow the First Amendment has become the source of many rancorous debates. Included with the increase in ways to express opinions, Americans have so many more ways to store information. USB drives, hard drives, phones, and traditional papers and documents. The Fourth Amendment is more important than ever. This amendment has become an issue when immigration officials have asked people for their documents. Should Americans and non-Americans alike be required to carry documents or information or identification that clearly states they are legally in the country at all times? Some say yes because of national security, others think that's an overstep and it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. The last amendment in the Bill of Rights is the 10th Amendment. Basically, whatever powers not specifically granted to the federal government reside with the states and people. Even today, there is a constant tug-of-war between the central government in Washington, D.C. and states on what the states are prevented to make legislation on and what is only allowed by the federal government. Keep in mind that the central government in Washington, D.C. today has to deal with 37 more state governments than the central government in Washington, D.C. needed to in 1800. One last issue that we might want to explore with the Founding Fathers is the debate around the time it takes for the president himself to make a decision versus the legislative body of Congress to make a decision, or to both make a simultaneous decision all at once. Because today we need leadership that can make competent, correct, quick decisions faster than ever. For example, in warfare, there has been much debate about whether the president himself should be able to conduct military operations or if he should seek the approval of Congress as well. There are some that argue that seeking the approval of Congress takes too long in a world where decisions need to be made rapidly, while others argue that the president alone shouldn't make that important decision regarding the lives of American servicemen. There are also many more technologies and scientific questions that people demand that the government answer, as opposed to in 1776. How to either combat or acclimate a country to climate change, how to regulate nuclear energy for peaceful, commercial, or military purposes, space policy. The Founding Fathers would realize there are just many things that they simply couldn't conceive of creating rules to allow the government to properly legislate those things. However, one of the advantages of the Constitution is that it is a malleable document, and through legislative and executive action, it can be changed and reformed. The challenge is that the country needs to be united enough in order to make those changes. I thought I'd stick with the subject of exploring how the Founding Fathers would view various events in U.S. history and different aspects of what makes up the American identity. American history is so long and complex we couldn't possibly explore everything, but I tried my best across 2 videos. If the Founding Fathers saw the current issues afflicting Americans today and were given the opportunity to go back to the drawing board and make reforms, do you think they would go ahead and make changes? Or would they be satisfied with what the country has become and accept their losses? Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.